I read it and I thought it was really, really well done. And I worked with Heather on tweaking a bunch of elements, but the biggest one being the chronology and how it unfolded. I was really interested in the arc of the episode in general, being this a reverse descent into madness.
But they become brothers. It's strange and quite beautiful. And you know, Pablo Schreiber, I've said since day one, is possibly the best actor I've ever had the opportunity of working with.
Yeah, I was privy to the fact that Neil had a whole bunch of material on Sweeney that he hadn't put in the book, but I was told about these mysterious 6,000 years of missing Sweeney history while we were doing press for season 1. So I knew it was floating around. I was aware that we would be able to do something Sweeney related for season 2. From the beginning of when we started shooting season 2, I was told that 207 would be my episode. And so Neil sat with Heather, who had already been assigned this episode, gave her all of this Sweeney backstory, and she went away and wrote an episode that when it was given to me, I read it and I thought it was really, really well done. And I worked with Heather on tweaking a bunch of elements, but the biggest one being the chronology and how it unfolded. I was really interested in the arc of the episode in general, being this a reverse descent into madness. So we saw at the beginning of the episode him in his most manic and out of sorts state, and he sort of comes to his senses as the episode goes on. And I wanted the chronology of the flashback to be in reverse. So as he was trying to uncover this mystery of who he is and unearth this the fog of identity that he had created for himself through these hundreds of years that he's been here, I wanted his backstory to be revealed little by little, and so I wanted the flashbacks to go in reverse, which was really the big change that I offered. There were so many great elements that came together for this. One particular one that I'd like to shout out and call out is the hair designer, Daniel Cure, made 7 different wigs for the episode for me, and each of the looks throughout history is so unique and so interesting, and he did some really, really fantastic work. Part of what we're dealing with this too is like the fog of memory, and Sweeney's a storyteller, and we don't always know what parts, he doesn't even know what parts of the story are true. He's trying to figure out how much of his history he actually remembers and how much is oral history that has been communicated, that he's been told. And so all of these pieces are kind of floating and coming together. What I really loved about the opportunity of getting to do this episode is the range of the episode. Obviously, like the amount of things that I got to go through in terms of emotion and in terms of character, in terms of color, you know, the elements of emotion and softness that are there, and then the elements of, you know, physicality and hardness and choreography and fighting. But you know, I'm also very comfortable in that world, and yeah, so obviously while I'm preparing for the impending end of this character that I've worked on for so long and have loved so hard, and dealing with all the emotional baggage of the episode in him, as I mentioned, him unraveling his past and preparing to meet his end. Then I'm also like going to, you know, stunt rehearsals on my lunch hour and continuing to eat 5 meals a day and do all my sit-ups, you know, whatever. It's obviously Ricky and I did a lot of work together over the course of the 2 seasons. And the wrapping up of the Shadow Sweeney arc is one of my favorite things. And the fact that he goes out, essentially, you could almost say he sacrifices himself for Shadow.
The dynamic between Shadow and Sweeney is possibly my favorite shift in the whole season. Because obviously their first meet was a bar dance, and they went at it and they hated each other. They didn't know each other. Sweeney was pushing buttons, and Shadow was not taking any of it. He wasn't going to back down. He was recently released from prison, where you don't allow people to walk over you like that. And season 2 really does finish on a huge high, and it's almost frustrating for an audience, because here you see two alphas actually working together and they don't even realize it. You know, they're both fighting for the same thing. Sweeney's trying to help Shadow escape Wednesday's clutches because he knows Wednesday's true agenda. Everyone kind of seems to know what's going on apart from Shadow, and Shadow's just trying to do the right thing. He's trying to keep Wednesday alive. He's human at the end of the day. He has morals, and he feels that, you know, no matter how bad Wednesday gets, no one really deserves to die. But they become brothers. It's strange and quite beautiful. And, you know, Pablo Schreiber, I've said since day one, is possibly the best actor I've ever had the opportunity of working with. How we kind of developed throughout that episode where we first see him under the bridge and we think he might possibly be dead. You actually see relief that, you know, Shadow might have missed him a little bit. You know, what happens in the end, how's that going to affect Shadow moving forward? I mean, we know he's a god, but a death is still a death. And Shadow, we know, is a very moral guy, and his compass is pointed always straight ahead. And how's that going to affect him? He didn't mean to kill Sweeney, but Sweeney fell on his spear. So that's something that's a burden that's going to have to stay with Shadow.